Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and look, it's Austin, the Day Ghost.
I just had the weirdest experience. What is this music again?
That is my favorite video game music of all time. That is Marble Zone, the second track on the original Sonic the Hedgehog, which I've played in with several different covers, but I don't know that I've ever done just the original track, so that's what I did tonight.
So I was also on my phone playing Just Can't Get Enough, and they like formed into one song, and it worked really well. It was really weird.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it was a really weird remix that just kind of happened.
Well, anyway, so nothing to do with Sonic the Hedgehog whatsoever. Let's talk about the MCU once again, because this is a topic that just doesn't come up enough on this channel.
You just can't get enough, yeah.
Austin, I want to ask you this simple question to start us off. It's in the thumbnail. Is the MCU screwed?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, no, with a but.
Okay. Give me the longer answer. What is the but, sir? What is past the ellipsis?
So I'm just referencing The Simpsons, but I don't know. I feel like kind of, but also it depends on, like, there's just so many depends things with this, right? Where it all depends on, I think, how stuff like Fantastic Four does, how those next two Avengers movies turn out. I do think that there is a slight chance that they could turn the ship around and kind of fix things. And it'll be interesting to see how they react to DC now that DC is changing. Everything's just so up in the air right now. But right now, things look real dire.
Yeah. So, my perspective on this is folks are maybe jumping the gun too quickly when they say, just in general, not just with MCU, the superhero movie genre is dead. I've been hearing this quite a bit recently. There's a channel, I showed you the video, there's a channel called Echo Chamberlain, which is a super fun name for a YouTube channel, by the way, who did a 10-minute video breaking down why he thinks, based on the history of movies and like pop culture in general, the superhero movie genre has run its course now. And I feel like I thought about just playing his video, but I know we'll stretch it out forever, and we'll make this like a 3-hour video. We're starting late because we did another stream earlier anyway, so I'm not gonna play that. But I'll try to remember to put the link in the description later because I didn't do that. But you can take a look at it. The big beef that I had with his video, and I agree with some of the things he says in it, with the reason, particularly reasons that people are not as invested in the MCU as they used to be. The big beef that I had with that video and with a lot of this this rhetoric I'm hearing that the superhero movie genre is dead is I feel like there's some ignoring successes going on. And it's easy to maybe put some of the recent successes in separate categories and say that they're all exceptions. But at the end of the day, however you feel about any of these movies, whether you love them or hate them, when Guardians 3 has, I'll just go to the most recent example, the smallest percentage drop of any superhero movie in a really long time.
And it's like the third of the MCU, entirely in its entire run. I think it's like the third or fourth.
Whether that movie ultimately technically is successful as far as making money or getting its money back, forget whether too much money was spent on that in the front end or the back end, et cetera, when in its second week it's already well over 500, it's difficult to me to say that the genre itself is dead, right? And I'm going to say a couple things tonight that some people might see as inherently contradictory, and I don't think they are. I think the MCU at the moment is in a decline. I also don't think that the superhero genre is dead. I don't think these are mutually exclusive ideas. So let me just get out in front and mention that part of it. But you can say, okay, but people were already invested in that universe, wanted to see how those movies ended. It's James Gunn's last hurrah at Marvel. People thought that he wasn't even going to get to make that movie, etc., etc. Okay, maybe that's an isolated case. So then you look at No Way Home, made like $2 billion. And then you go, okay, well, that might be an isolated case because it's a big nostalgia fest and it's not just about the MCU Spider-Man, and the MCU Spider-Man movies were pretty successful anyway, so it being a sequel to that, plus the other Spider-Mans come back, of course that's going to do well. Okay, what about the Batman? The Batman did pretty darn good at the box office. It's a brand new version of that character and that universe. Nobody knew how exactly that was going to go when it came out. Is that an isolated case? And you can say, well, it's Batman. People always go to Batman movies. That's always successful. But BVS didn't do anything like what it was supposed to, according to Warner's, and it had a huge drop-off in its second week, and Justice League was an abject failure, and it had Batman in it. So, is there such a thing as superhero fatigue? Yeah. Is it because we're tired of superhero movies, or is it because we're tired of not getting a lot of great ones? Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. When even, to broaden that out to, like, Doctor Strange 2 made $900 million at the box office. Thor 4, while a movie that no one liked, still made $700 million, so it was still around the Batman. Like, there's still movies making money.
It's almost like, I feel like there's this disconnect where if the superhero genre isn't as dominant as it used to be, it's dead now. And I wanted to start this video off by defining terms and deciding like where we stand with this whole idea. Because I've been seeing a lot of comments on our videos and in some other places online, Austin, that where people will go, well, clearly the genre is taking a nosedive and people don't care about superhero movies anymore. There's no way. I keep seeing this comment specifically pop up. There's no way that you'll ever see the height that the MCU was at with Infinity War and Endgame. To which I respond with, we didn't think we'd see that height either. I mean, that's mountainous. That was astronomical success. So you're saying that once you hit a peak, if it doesn't stay there, it's a failure. Now, having said that, we are seeing failures with the MCU on a level that I personally thought would take longer. Mm-hmm. So these things are true. I think it's not a simple thing. There's a lot of complexities to this. But this part of it is simple enough to me. I think that a lot of the movies have not been what people want and have not been perceived as good as some of the things that came before. And B, I think that there was just so much oversaturation right after Endgame. This idea that you do this big, wonderful finale, again, perceived wonderful, however you feel about that movie. I got my issues with it, but I think overall it was a pretty good finale to cap off that whole thing. If you never made another movie, you really put a bow in everything. Your next movies have got to be very different and surprising and take you in a different direction and not just be everything you've seen before. And you can't have too many of them because there's not a lot of incentive to bring you back except you love the last thing we did. You know what I mean? That's kind of it. And I think that's the biggest issue is just oversaturation and lack of quality. So like, can you come back from that? Yeah, absolutely you can. Mm-hmm. But will they? Is really the bigger question to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially because with Endgame, it's very easy for that to just be like a cycling out thing as opposed to just a cap ending, because there were still so many new characters that we had that people liked that would continue forward from that. Like we only had one Doctor Strange movie, we only had one Spider-Man movie, one Black Panther movie. There's no real reason that it couldn't have kept going just the way it was after that. Um, but that's not how people feel, and I think for me it's mainly a quality issue. And I think a lot of people also go to this idea that it's not linked up enough, but I don't even have an issue with that. Like, I think the Infinity stuff is too linked. Like,
I
I
do
was
too.
thinking
I don't.
about that back in the day.
Is the issue that it's not interconnected enough, or that people aren't invested in the way they were before with the interconnectivity? I do think there's kind of a difference
Mhm.
with those two ideas, and the big change I would have made to keep people interested, and this is risky and maybe it wouldn't have worked, but I would have made it a great deal less about that right afterwards, which I think is kind of what Feige thought he was doing with the oversaturation, where it was like, well, we'll just throw out something for everybody. But the problem is, too many of them, and I've said this before in other videos, too many of them established characters that would then show up in something else, and whether or not, scene by scene, it was really important that you'd met them before. You might go, who is this? It's random. They came out of nowhere. Clearly they were in something else before. And it makes you feel like you're supposed to see everything. So B, I don't feel like Feige put out the memo well enough of whether the idea was watch everything like it had been before, because a lot of people, and obviously not just comic fans, like a lot of just regular moviegoers, saw everything because they watch the Marvel Universe like a franchise in and of itself, not like a studio making franchises, right? Feige sent massive mixed signals during Phase 4 and 5. Is it a studio making disparate movies that happen to all be in the same continuity, but it doesn't matter? Or are you supposed to watch all of it? And having seen a lot of what's come out, I feel like it's more that first thing, but your average viewer isn't going to know that. So if they perceive it as, it's all perception, if they perceive it as, I'm supposed to watch everything, I don't care anymore. I'm just not interested. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, because that's one thing I want to say that I like about Phase 4 is that I like that it's kind of just, hey, here, people who like Miss Marvel, here's your Miss Marvel thing. People who like not Moon Knight will like not Moon Knight. People, like there's just kind of different things as opposed to what it used to be, where it was much more like, okay, you have to watch pretty much every movie. And there's, exceptions to that. Like Ant-Man isn't really that connected. Like, obviously he shows up later, but you don't really need to watch that. And I do like that we got to more of that place where like there's more disparate things. It's just that they couldn't keep the quality up, and I think a lot of that is because they're just doing too much and they're spread thin. And I also don't think they're hiring the right creators.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to stop hiring Rick and Morty writers because it keeps failing.
Well, and what tends to happen, there's so many different points that I could make right now. What tends to happen when you let something go on for too long with the same, without going to a lot of new blood and keeping the same people at the helm. Like, yeah, they're going to new blood in the sense, like you said, Rick and Morty writers, like random other writers. But we've always used different creators. We've had the same people at the helm the whole time. And I'm not saying that Feige has no idea what he's doing whatsoever and should have been fired at some point. I'm saying, how do you not get fatigue yourself? You know what I mean? Like, what tends to happen is, because you have to to some degree look at this like a TV show with too many seasons. And you can either pass the torch and let people with fresh ideas who aren't burnt out, who haven't been doing this the whole time, come in and kind of reshape it and remold it. Or you can stay the course, and what tends to happen is you lose track. You kind of lose the script a little bit, and you devolve into self-parody. Which, and I always make this comparison, but I was waiting for when exactly the MCU would start to show its seams like the Arrowverse did, and it happened much earlier with the Arrowverse, and it took people too long to jump ship from the Arrowverse when the shark had been jumped far too far for my taste. The MCU, for a lot of people that I'm seeing jumping ship right now, it's happened way faster than I thought it would. And some of that is this kind of, self-parody that it's devolved into. I don't mean every project, but She-Hulk shouldn't have been possible. That should have never been made, from what I've heard about it. I haven't even watched it because I'm afraid to, just from what I've heard.
Well, it is funny now too, because one of the writers on that is Zeb Wells, who's doing the new Spider-Man book that's like super infamous, and he's also the writer of the Marvels movie.
Is he really? Which sucks, because I've liked him in the past.
And he's a writer on Deadpool 3, so yay. But
I'd love to know what's going on behind the scenes with all of that, though, because I've liked some of Zeb Wells' comic work.
Mm-hmm. No, and there's definitely a lot of studio and editorial with the comic side interference and saying, like, here, go off and make this. I think you mentioned on one of the recent Captain Logan shows about Doctor Strange, where it apparently had 33 rewrites.
33 rewrites.
Mandated by the studio. Like, that's crazy. And I imagine that's probably after Raimi and that writer get hired on, too. So there's probably even more before that, when it was Derrickson.
Yeah, and
unless it's included in that.
What's so weird about that for me is I actually liked that project okay.
Yeah, we both liked that movie.
And
we're
that's
like the only people, but
that's what's weird about it is, and I still don't fully understand that. And like with respect to everybody, I have had a really different experience with some of this from, I guess, the norm, I guess the consensus, where like some of the movies that even people that have not been overall as invested in the MCU and don't care like they used to, again, about it as a continuity, as like a franchise unto itself. Some of the projects that I haven't liked have been the things that have kept them around, or that I haven't liked as well. So, like, the general consensus is No Way Home is the best, or maybe the second best movie in Phase 4. I don't agree with that. But a lot of people think that the big, clear, divide, or the big clear moment where the MCU started really falling apart was Doctor Strange, or was Multiverse of Madness, and I'm like, that was one of the only movies in Phase 4 I really liked.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, because I mentioned the whole creator thing, where I don't think they're hiring the best creators at this point. I'll go to, because we have 2 Avengers movies coming out. And when we hired the Russos back in the day, I think all of us went like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Like they did Winter Soldier and they did Civil War. Is there a single director that's worked in the MCU right now that is currently, like, maybe not like working on a project, but like has done something post-Endgame that you would say, yeah, they should do Secret Wars, because that doesn't have a director yet?
No.
with
the Russos, however you feel about Endgame, the big reason they made so much sense for those Avengers movies is because they made Civil War, which was nearly universally loved, and they knew how to juggle a crap ton of characters. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to do that with those movies.
Yeah, and Kang Dynasty is being done by the guy who did Shang-Chi, which people liked, but I think is super bland and 100% like a paint by numbers. Like, we hired a guy to do the studio work. And that movie,
I think so too.
That movie is a single character protagonist that struggles to juggle its characters. Like, I have no faith in Kang Dynasty.
Well, and for my money, it's even harder to see how anybody could make that especially effective, because with the Russos, I mean, it kind of helps, and I'm not throwing them under the bus when I say this. I think that they overall did a really good job on stuff, but they had the advantage of coming in on very well-developed, well-fleshed out characters that everybody understood, that were overall pretty consistently written throughout. And we don't have much of that right now. Like, you've got a lot of brand new characters that I don't know very much about, or that had maybe, like a big arc in their TV show or something that's maybe like some of them like established well enough, like I know what they're about, and some of them kind of blank slates. What I mean is some of these characters haven't been around very long, and some of them aren't super fleshed out yet. So you need somebody that my point is, not only can balance, juggle a lot of characters at once, but also can, continue to draw them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the main problem with it right now is that, like you said, none of the characters are especially great, especially the new ones that we're adding. Except for us, who because we liked what's her face,
America Chavez. We loved her.
Yeah, no, we liked her a lot, and I've seen that movie again, like thinking about issues people have, and like I'm like, no, I still like her. I don't know.
I've seen it 2 or 3 times. I really like her, and I think that actress did a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like new Hawkeye.
And I was gonna say, I'm actually in a place where I would take a full on just female Avengers team, because I think all of the new characters that I actually really dig are women, I think.
Well,
there's a couple
that duo, so
there's a couple that don't. Say again.
Yeah. So I got that as a duo, so that'll be my Avengers. It's just Hawkeye and America Chavez, and throw Cosmo in there. That's my girl Avenger.
Well, and I mean, the Marvels notwithstanding, because I'm not holding out a ton of hope for that movie. Like, we'll see how it is. I don't like to, make too many assumptions based on a trailer and stuff, but that premise does nothing for me. And I just don't know what that's going to be like, of course. But, I liked Monica Rambeau in the stuff she's been in so far. There's 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go.
And I like Miss Marvel fine. She seems obnoxious in that trailer, but in her show I liked her I haven't finished it. I think I had 2 episodes left, but
yeah, and I haven't seen that show. I don't think I've finished a single season of a Disney Plus thing since it's either Hawkeye or Loki, whichever comes first. I can't remember. So I think Hawkeye.
See, now that you said that, I want to back off for a second and go back to just that general, revisiting that general superhero fatigue idea. I have that, and I think you do too, but it's not that I'm sick of superheroes. I mean, I'm still doing a regular show, reviewing and doing commentaries on superhero movies. I'm not tired of the genre. I'm tired of it right now.
Well, and for me, I would say I'm actually more excited about the superhero genre right now because, I'm really excited for what's going to happen with DC. I'm really excited for the new Hellboy movie. That's my most anticipated film of next year. I just don't care about what Marvel's doing. They kind of have to win me back.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about everything around that. I guess I'm more interested in the MCU than I am the Sony stuff. That's not saying anything.
Yeah, that's not saying anything. Because that hasn't been a cohesive universe anyway, and I don't care if it is. But I haven't really liked anything. Their best movie is still that first Venom movie, and I mean they've only made 3 so far. I get that, but
that's still not saying anything.
That's still not saying anything.
And we're gonna have 2 this year, maybe just 1. Maybe it's just Craven this year.
Yeah, what would the other one be? Is it
Madam Web?
Madam Web, yeah.
I think that's next year, though.
If that is that even filming? Do we know for sure they're making
that?
Filming. Oh, is it really?
We have set photos. Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know that. Great! I can't wait.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited.
But I feel like depending on how things go, I feel like we're in a 2005, 2006 again, or 2006, 2007, where it's we're just pumping out crap right now. But I feel like 2025 is going to be a good year with both Superman and the Batman too. I don't know what it's going to look like on Marvel's end with Fantastic Four, and I think Kang Dynasty's out that year. But we'll see.
That's the earliest that we'll get to see really the course correction, the pivoting that they're having to do as they're backing off on the sheer amount of Disney Plus content they were putting out, and as they're responding to all this criticism, because they're clearly hearing it, and they're clearly trying to decide how exactly to handle things, because they can't stay the course as it is right now. But with some of the quotes that we've gotten from Feige and the up and ups that I've talked about on the Captain Logan show here and there, I can't tell if those guys really understand why people aren't invested the way they used to be. I do feel like they're still too close to their own prior successes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting just seeing both sides.
A little out of touch, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting at this point seeing both sides now that we have more of a Kevin Feige on DC's side, where you have Feige saying, superhero fatigue doesn't exist. Like, you never have to worry about that. And you have Gunn on the other side saying superhero fatigue doesn't exist, bad movie fatigue exists, and you have to keep making good movies. Like, there's just such a difference in how they talk about it. That I think is important.
Well, and if the DCEU kept limping along with the baggage, and they weren't doing the reboot that they're doing, and the MCU continued on not really getting why some of their failures are happening now, 5 or 10 years of that, you would get to a place, I think, where people would just give up on superhero as a genre. You have the point I made at the very beginning with here's a list of the movies that are still doing close to $1 billion or $1 billion, is to say, again, however we might feel about certain movies, for the general populace, we're still getting 1 or 2 really good, successful superhero movies a year right now. So, to say that the genre is dead is very strange to me, right? Like, it's all a matter of perspective. Like, relative to where we were around Endgame, where it felt like superhero could do no wrong. Again, that was the perception. There were still movies coming out that didn't necessarily do big guns all the time, but the perception was that's what you have to make in order to make any money at the box office. Relative to that, sure, but I'm actually weirdly optimistic. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Marvel, but if they're smart, what they'll realize is all they've got to do is make fewer projects, make it less about interconnectivity, make it less about being bigger than the last thing. That's been a massive problem with the multiverse thing. Like, after Endgame, I went, well, the next thing you do is you go smaller. Of course, that's not what we did. We got to get bigger and bigger. Oh, I know. Let's make the stakes lesser by making it impossible for any character to really ever be dead. Okay, like that's smart. Slash your budgets.
That's a big thing.
Make it not about the $1 billion movie. Just say, okay, they're still big enough movies. They got to make $400,000 or $500,000, $400 or $500 million.
Or hey, we're doing a Moon Knight TV show. Why don't we do a grounded street level thing with unknowns?
Yeah.
What a novel idea. Instead of big actors and a giant kaiju fight.
Does it have to own the box office to not be dead?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think the genre is dead, and I don't think there's full on superhero fatigue until something like Batman and Spider-Man are bombing. Like, it's when you get the big things that people aren't interested in.
Yeah, and again, if everything that was successful, this is going back to that point I made at the beginning. If everything that was successful was No Way Home and The Flash, we don't know how The Flash is going to do yet, I would say, okay, maybe there's some credibility to this. Maybe it's just nostalgia that's selling.
Yeah.
You can't say that when the Batman does as well as it did.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the Spider-Man movie that's the second most successful is Far From Home, was the one directly before that. It was the first one to make $1 billion. So,
and that did not have that nostalgia any more than any other popular superhero does. You have the nostalgia of people grew up with this character. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean the like, intentional. I hesitate to say forced. Sometimes it feels that way, but the intentional like marketing of nostalgia.
Yeah. No, I just mean with Spider-Man, like there's a clear building point that leads to No Way Home too. Like I think they could have made maybe not as much money without the nostalgia angle, but I think they still would have cracked over $1 billion easily if they just did another Spider-Man movie off of that cliffhanger.
I think it's also important to note that among fans of this genre, and when I say that, I mean people that were already big superhero fans before superhero movies took over, but also people that got into the genre because of superhero movies. I don't agree with this, but I hear over and over again constantly that Into the Spider-Verse is the best superhero movie ever made. That came out, 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
Yeah, because that's 2019.
We can't have full-on superhero fatigue. People were just ready to completely move on from this genre. If people think that the best one just came out a few years ago, I just feel like we're jumping the gun, and we've forgotten like how not long ago that was. You know what I mean? Where it's like there's so much history since Endgame. Yeah, it's because Marvel did everything in internet time. It's because they put out 10 years worth of content in 3 years, right? That's why it feels that way. It feels like a lot more time has passed us by than has. And of course, COVID has a lot to do with that too, because we sat around waiting for stuff to come out. And then when it finally did, too much of it wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hear a lot of people say the same things with the Batman. That's last year, and people are excited to see a Penguin TV show. When could you ever say that people would be excited to watch a TV show about the Penguin?
Yeah.
It's just you just have to make things that people care about.
And this is not me being an apologist for the genre because of what I do. Like, I think, judging by some of the live comments when we came in, I think some people were expecting me to be
game over,
really dire. Yeah, somebody said like Cap's gonna put up his the end is nice sign again. Like, I'm just trying to call it like I see it. As I always do, and like I think that there is reason for concern, but I don't think that it's a ship that you can't turn around. And I think that even if Marvel has a dark period, if DC is putting out at least a few things that people go and really like and make a lot of money, like superhero fatigue doesn't kill the whole thing. It's almost like if Marvel's not at their apex still, the whole genre dies, because people still to some degree see Marvel superhero movies as synonymous with the genre. And there's other stuff coming out, but it was easy to ignore DC because they were all over the map.
Yeah, that's something that I hope that and I think we're likely to get it with the slate that we have right now, is to still be all over the map, but just with good quality, where you go, hey, like, you like horror movies.
Well, that's what I mean is,
here's Swamp Thing. Like, you'll like Swamp Thing. Oh, you like quirky comedy things? Here's Booster Gold. Oh, you like kind of fantasy stuff? Here's that Amazon show. Oh, you like big superhero things? Here's Superman. Or here's Batman.
And they can be in the same continuity, and they can interconnect to some degree, and maybe in unexpected, curious, interesting ways. But they can also all be separate pieces, and that's the lesson that Marvel's got to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we can have the, I guess, gritty Green Lantern TV show come out right after we have Superman, and we need to get that with Marvel.
And again, a lot of it's about marketing. It isn't because I know what some people are likely to come back at me with, but Cap, they haven't been all that interconnected because they've been making like so much random content and kind of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But again, the company line has still been, it feels to me like anyway, we're great because we're a continuity. It all counts. It's all, in the same universe. And it looks like DC's approach is, yeah, it's all technically in the same universe, but we are making stuff for different people also.
Well, and I think especially right now, like it's easier to say like, yeah, like it is, everything's separated. But the more that they go, I think is going to be a lot harder with how they're handling things. Well, like let's say you really like the Netflix Daredevil show. You're gonna watch that show, and now you're gonna have baggage from Hawkeye and the Echo show that is maybe going to be awkward when you watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's the big show that like they kind of can't mess up. Like I think
Yep.
they will lose so much faith if they screw up Daredevil.
I predict, well, I shouldn't say predict because I'm always wrong. I think there's a good chance down the road at something akin to kind of a soft reboot with Marvel. I don't think you'll see a full-on reboot of the MCU. I think that would be a mistake. I think that would be a mistake. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people's childhoods at this point. Like, you are still going to have enough goodwill that just starting over will probably never make sense. But finding an excuse to recast somehow some of the big heavy hitter characters that are the reason people got into the first place might be their only hope. Eventually, I think. Because right now the strategy is, well, we wrote out Iron Man, we wrote out Captain America, et cetera, et cetera. We've got mantles, and we've got C-D-E-list characters that the general public has never heard of. And yeah, there's potential in lots of those characters. Adapt them. But the problem is, you had a lot of like rushed adaptations where nobody's heart was in it. Whereas just now we got to get that on the screen. And so, it kind of makes sense that some of that stuff isn't resonating with people. I don't hear anybody, and it's not a terrible show, don't get me wrong, but I don't hear anybody talk about Moon Knight. I don't hear, anything like as many people as I thought would talk about Miss Marvel, and I think that show's okay.
Well, I think that's the least viewed show. I don't know about Moon Knight, but like where it falls into that. Yeah, no, I don't think they really stuck with people the way that a lot of their other stuff did. And they definitely are going to hit a point where they're going to go, okay, but we can't just completely throw away like Iron Man and Captain America, right? Like there's so much money to be made off of that.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, like, yeah, I would like to see Iron Man films outside of the MCU. You guys didn't adapt anything. Can I please get my Iron Man movies?
Well, and I still say with multiverse, and maybe we did a whole speculation cast on this, so I don't want to go rounds again too much talking about the future, but like they with multiverse have given themselves an out where they could have multiple continuities if they wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I like about DC is that they're open to that. Like DC, if things go well, and hypothetically, if DC everything turns out well, they will both have a working MCU and a working Sony Spider-Man universe running simultaneously with both the DCU and the Batman, because that's also going to have all those different spin-offs.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Like, I think if it works out, and like I don't want to just assume that everything Gunn touches is going to be gold.
Yeah, of course.
But when that stuff starts coming out, hopefully they'll be kind of leading the charge and setting an example for Marvel, and they'll get the right lessons from it. I mean, it's kind of weird how the script has been flipped, and how it's just like comics where one of the big two cannot be, like, they can't both be great at the same time. In my lifetime, or at least since I started reading comics, Marvel and DC are never good at the same time. When I was born, they were, and then right after that, it's like Marvel mostly sucks, DC is great. And then in the 2000s, that was flipped. And then it wasn't anymore. I say in the 2000s. It was every few years it flipped, right? And we have exactly the same thing in the movies now. It's like if Marvel is great, DC has to be not so great, and then flip that back. So when the DCEU started, the big cue they took from Marvel was, oh crap, we have to be a multiverse and we have to try to get to our Avengers as fast as humanly possible because they got ahead of us too quickly. So what did they do? Their second movie had the word justice in it. And they're just like forcing that and rushing it and pushing to it too quickly. My hope is that now, ironically, and with Gunn flipping from Marvel to DC, super ironic in lots of different ways, you'll have a DC that is leading the charge where they've got multiple continuities at the same time, where they can have basically Batman, like two totally polar opposite versions of Batman in the theater at the same time, maybe, or real close to the same time. And then Marvel hopefully will look at that and go, oh, maybe we should just be creative. I don't know. Like, maybe we should just make stuff.
Yeah, like, hey, these two because I imagine those two Batman things will be very different looking. Like, maybe if we're just upfront and we say, like, hey, these are two very clearly different things, maybe we can get away with that. Maybe people just like those characters and would like to see different versions of them. And that was another big thing that I wanted to mention, especially earlier with the creator thing. Now that you mentioned the Gunn stuff, is with Phase 1 and Phase 2, we had Whedon kind of script consulting through the MCU, and then we learned recently that Gunn was doing that through Phase 3. Like, is there anyone that they have at this point that would make sense to do that, or would like be good at that right now?
The only person sorta kinda, if he's even still wanting to be there or working with them, is Raimi, maybe.
Yeah, and I can't see Raimi doing that because he does so much stuff outside of that, even just as a producer. I don't know if he would script consult like that.
And we saw with his Doctor Strange that he could not care less about their continuity.
yeah, exactly.
See, he could consult and make the scripts better, but he's not going to be helpful for making them all make sense together because he doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm. No, he just came in and was like, hey, I like Doctor Strange, so...
he's got the eye, deal with it.
Mordo and Doctor Strange have more of their comic book relationship because that's the stuff that I like. And I don't care what you set up.
Because you're just making a movie. And I can respect that.
Yeah.
I mean... it's a little frustrating when you put it all together, when you look at it as an ongoing story, because we are, I always say this, I don't mean to be obsessed with or a stickler for continuity, but it's not just a matter of, you made this minor discrepancy with this other thing. We're telling an ongoing story at the same time as separate stories, right? So like there's stuff that Doctor Strange hadn't dealt with yet in his first movie that we built on with the second movie, but then he's got the Eye of Agamotto somehow. You know what I mean? It's like
it's just the comic book version now.
But then at the same time, if the story's compelling and I like the characters, it is much easier to ignore the stuff that you cheated on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's some of the stuff I didn't like in the first place and how interconnected it was. Like, why did the Eye of Agamotto have to be the Time Stone? Why did the Mind Stone have to be the stone in Vision's head? Especially because that's just the stand-in for Adam Warlock, because Adam Warlock has the Soul Stone in the comics on his head.
Yeah.
And then now we get Guardians 3, and it's like, he just has a stone. It doesn't really matter. Who cares? It's just there.
But see, this is because you're a comic guy and you know the source material. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to marketing and convincing people, whether you think they were duped or not, that this is a like complex, really well thought out continuity, the Infinity Stones have a lot to do with people buying that company line.
No, absolutely. No, I think most of the general audience looked at it and went like, oh, this is cool world building.
Yeah.
While somebody like me went, yeah, why does this all have to be connected? It makes the universe so much smaller.
And then it's also not real sustainable. Because once you destroy the Infinity Stones, you've got all this other stuff that they were related to that you still want to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We can never do the Adam Warlock Soulstone stuff. It's just off the table.
So I want to take us to a couple of points in superhero movie history, if I can, and
Go for
use these as examples for why, in my opinion, we are not to the point of no return yet, as far as necessarily, as far as the MCU just totally losing steam and nobody cares anymore. And if they're not careful, they could get there, absolutely. And this is coming, by the way, from a guy that is kind of not invested anymore, you know. But like, I'm waiting for them to like. There will be individual projects that I go, that was super cool, or that was nearly as good as some of the things that I liked, you know, earlier on, Winter Soldier, Civil War, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm sure, like, if Fantastic Four is good, like, we will both look at it and go, like, oh, that was cool. Like, I'm glad we got that.
Yeah, but the big problem is, I go there because I review these things before I go there because I'm super excited to see them. So even when I love a thing, I'm like, God, I wish I had been excited to go in the first place. That's my big thing right now, is that I'm not invested anymore in the universe. And I don't mean to sound contradictory, because what I'm asking for is more stuff for different people, and it doesn't have to be all about the continuity. But they set me up for over a decade to be just excited about their universe. You know what I mean? Just not just the interconnectivity, but like, they were of a quality that whenever they put something out, I was interested to see it. They weren't all great, but enough of them were that I trusted it. You know, it was at a certain level. Like, even Dark World, not a very good movie, but and boring, and I was kind of perplexed by, you know, the fact that they could put a thing like that out. Still of a particular quality that I'm sort of surprised that we've gotten as far away from as we have, if that makes any sense. Like,
No, and I think there's cool stuff in Dark World.
There's still a standard there.
Yeah. Like, I like Dark World more.
It's a
than
misstep,
like
don't get me
Ragnarok.
wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of the Thor movies to a degree are missteps, but
Yeah.
absolutely.
So let's go back for a minute to, I'm going to give you two examples.
Okay.
The first one is the beginning of the DCEU. It's 2013, Man of Steel comes
I'm in
out.
high school. Okay, here we go. I'm right back.
Man of
I know
Steel
this very well.
is massively polarizing. We start the DCEU on this really weird, bittersweet note, where some people are in love with it, and some people go, you ruined Superman, he snapped a guy's neck. I think we have, by the way, supplanted the arguments about whether or not Superman should snap a guy's neck with, wow, Martha was the dumbest thing that we ever put in a movie.
With 2013 was like the year of like every major movie being controversial, because
Yeah.
like that was Iron Man 3 as
And then
well.
we never turned back, really.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I will get this point made. So that comes out. It's controversial. It's weird. It does well, but it doesn't make the money the studio thought it would. And they actually kind of half panic, because for a second, they're talking about rushing out a sequel to that movie the very next year. It was nuts. And then a lot of people don't remember that. There was an article where they were like, yeah, we're going to put out Man of Steel 2 next year. And I'm like, what are you doing? What? And then that ends up turning into BVS. And BVS comes out, and it has this huge 70% drop-off viewership from week 1 to week 2. And then Justice League bombs. You go, wow, DC's version of Avengers bombed. And like forget all the reasons, it's just that on paper, that out of context is insane. Like, Justice League as a brand is like 100 times more recognizable during my childhood than Avengers is. And that comes out on the big screen, live action version, Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, etc., bombs the box office. And yet, superhero fatigue has not killed superhero movies.
It didn't even kill DC, because Aquaman made $1 billion the next year.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is, isn't that aren't we looking at kind of a similar situation where what you're seeing, because I was hearing that term thrown around right then, where it's like, oh, look, some of these movies aren't doing as well. Let's look at the circumstances. Let's look at the situation. Are they not doing as well because people are done with superhero movies, or because they kind of suck, or at least people feel like they suck?
I would say the first time I think every year we've been talking about superhero fatigue since at least 2015. Mm-hmm. I think with at least the double beat of Age of Ultron, which, whether you like it or not, there was a lot of people saying it's not as good as the first one. Is the magic gone?
Is this the decline of
is this the decline? And then we had Fantastic right after.
Yeah.
That was a huge hit, and people were going, okay, maybe this is the end. And then we had Ant-Man, which was the best superhero movie of the year somehow. And then you had and then you had Daredevil, which everybody loved at the end of the year. But
yeah, that helped a lot.
I feel like that's the first year where I was hearing that constantly. It was like, okay, are we at the end? And I remember reading an article with the writers of Infinity War and Endgame, where they talked about signing on for those movies and how they didn't know after Age of Ultron had that reaction if they were signing on to basically do Superman 3 and 4, or if they were going to do movies that were going to be beloved.
Yeah.
Because it could have gone either way.
That's such a great point.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, failure, no matter how big, doesn't necessarily spell the end of a whole genre. Now, it might get closer to that if both of the big two have, like you mentioned earlier, Austin, they're real big franchises, all kind of screwing the pooch at the same time. But I don't think we're clearly not at a point yet. I mean, this is absurd to say, that people are so tired of superhero movies that if you put out a good Spider-Man movie, it's not going to do well at the box office. We're not there yet.
We'll be super excited about whatever that next Spider-Man movie is. I don't even think it matters. People will be excited for whatever it is.
And we're not in a place right now, certainly, where because I think this has to do with the fact that we've just been making these things for so long, and we get a bunch of them a year. But we're not at a place where just because it's a superhero movie, everybody's going to go see it. But then, were we ever at that place? That's just a question I'm asking.
No, a lot of people skipped Ant-Man. It made money, but not everybody felt the need to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, if that movie comes out right now, it probably doesn't do as well as it did then, because that had a lot to do with goodwill.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and that's the big thing, is that
consumer confidence.
We've lost that confidence. So you can't just say hey, the last Ant-Man film didn't make a ton of money, but we're gonna pump a little bit more in, try to make Ant-Man bigger. No one's supporting that at this point.
But was that? But also, there's a difference between a superhero movie and an MCU movie.
Mm.
So, just because it's superheroes doesn't mean it's going to make a ton of money. Now, it's going to be easier to get out in front of people because it is. Don't get me wrong; it's a fad that's lasted a long time, and I might actually be. I will say, maybe I'm actually a little surprised that it's had the legs that it has. Mm-hmm. To some degree. It's kind of like pop figures, where it's I would figure more people would have gotten tired of this at some point just because of a perceived lack of variety. I say perceived because there's plenty of smaller things that are in other genres for people to go look at, but the stuff that's all over your TV and your computer screens, it's the big blockbuster things.
Yeah, no, it's still that. And I hope with stuff like Hellboy next year that we'll see more smaller things in the genre, where that sounds like, I don't know what the budget on that is, but I would be shocked if it was 50 million. It sounds like it's on the smaller level like that.
So the reason I brought up the failures of the DCEU And you made a really terrific point, too, when you said even that was able to bounce back to some degree. It started in a super weird place where every time they put out a movie and it didn't do what they wanted it to, they went back to the drawing board and they course corrected and they started messing with stuff in the editing room, and that's how you got Suicide Squad turning out the way it did and all of that. Even that was able to turn around and put out some big movies. But forgetting that for a second, bad DC movies didn't make people stop looking at Marvel movies.
No.
So the idea that now, because I think people really think this, the idea that now bad or not as good Marvel movies will make people not care anything about the rebooted DC, mm-hmm. I don't buy that.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that
it is going to entirely depend on what those movies look like, obviously.
Yeah. No, that's something that I like about both sides with Feige and Gunn, is that they both have a dollar for us isn't a dollar taken away from you perspective on that. And I think that's very, I mean, you can tell that they probably have a good rapport.
I still say that the Hail Mary play will be a Marvel DC crossover.
I mean, it probably will be at some point.
That'll be the Hail Mary at the end of all that.
That'll be Superman 4.
Here's my, what if it's brilliant? Here is my second.
You just want amalgam.
I do. Here's I mean,
they're gonna put they're literally gonna CGI 2 actors together to make it though.
Oh no. Okay, my second example is to suggest why Marvel has a chance at bouncing back. And again, I could use DC, where like it started not very good and they still had successes, but and in that continuity, as shoddily put together as that was, let's go back to X-Men, shall we?
Yep.
You've got the first 2 movies, the second one especially super successful. X3, people are raising an eyebrow at. It was weird. I think it made money, but people didn't like it. And then and then Origins was really kind of the killer. And then First Class kind of soft reboots it.
It was like a sleeper hit.
If X-Men can come back.
Mm. If X-Men can come back, the MCU can come back and fail again. Like X-Men.
Yeah, it's all about putting out the right movie, and it's also about timing. I still stand by something I said when Endgame came out, and people thought I was crazy. I thought the whole MCU needed to take 2 years off, and I stand by that. Like, if they had done that and they had just really spent some time polishing whatever their next projects were and didn't put, a crazy amount of content out and made people really miss it, really long for it, they could have had a, whatever the movie was, they would have had to be smart about the project. They could have had a massive hit that came within the ballpark of at least Infinity War if they were smart about it. Now, the conventional wisdom was, well, people aren't going to care anymore if you don't keep putting stuff in front of them. I don't know if that's true with this.
I don't know. I've
not when you put the word "end" in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people look at that much more as an ending now that they didn't like what came after. I think if you jumped forward and Endgame was followed by a good Black Panther, a good Spider-Man, a good Doctor Strange, a good, Captain Marvel sequel, like whatever, I don't think anybody would be saying that if that was immediately what came after.
Okay, but
because nobody was saying it with Far From Home. Like that was mostly well received.
Okay, but can I give you my rebuttal?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, my rebuttal is
to retort.
My rebuttal is, had they taken that time off,
they could have had time to work on it.
Yeah.
That is very true. That is very true.
Like, I feel like it's almost just a given
When
that
I think
their
that's one
next
of the
projects are
issues.
better projects because they're not rushing them to. It just felt like they were kind of money milking their own thing.
Well, that's the worst part is we had COVID, so everything shut down right after. And I said during that point, like there should be like no poorly written films coming out after
Yeah.
this because you're all sitting at home, you have
Well,
nothing to
and that's
do.
the thing is they kind of had what I wanted forced on them, and then what do? They open the floodgates and they put 10 years worth of material out in a couple of years.
And how did Spider-Man like not have like a
Not
fully
10, but
developed idea or a script by the time that was shot? Like
yeah.
you had all this time. Like what were you doing?
Overthinking it, I think.
Mhm. Well, and then of course, like it sounds like they had an idea and then went, "Hey, our end credit scene is more interesting than what we have. Just do that," and it was a mess.
At the 11th hour.
Hmm.
But then, I worry that you'll learn all the wrong lessons for that because it was, in our opinions, a mess and also really popular.
Hmm. I think it's really interesting though that Gunn has basically come out and said that he doesn't like that movie without saying it at this point. Which just how many comments he's had that are basically looking directly at that and saying like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that."
It's not going to age well.
No, I think people are already having that. Like I've heard a ton of people that go, "Yeah, I watched it at home and it was kind of awkward because there was all these moments that stopped for me to clap, and I'm not in a theater."
I've been hearing a lot of that too. It's the opposite of what I get from a lot of my favorite movies, which is every time I see it, it kind of adds something to the experience. Like that is a one time, disposable kind of viewing movie, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's entirely built around.
Not everybody's going to feel that way, but
No, of course, but I mean, some people like to eat glue, so like not everybody's correct. Uh,
but it felt like going to a concert.
mhm. No, it's exactly what it was.
We've got a couple super chats. Let me read those real quick. Senior Sticks, $2 super chat. Thanks, man. Actually, every MCU character got 2 movies plus. Well, that's not true, unless you just mean that many appearances in things.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think he was referring to something you said real early on.
Well, I think that came in when you were saying about all these characters being introduced in shows and then showing up in movies. But
Okay.
I could be wrong. But even then, like I don't know. It's also way more to ask somebody to watch a TV show than it is to watch a movie.
Yeah, there's more of a commitment, and to ask people to watch multiple shows back to back to back to back.
Hmm. Yeah, I look at both my parents a lot with, like, obviously I don't go, "Oh, these two people think something, so therefore the general audience thinks this." But I think it's like a good rule of thumb to just like look at people that I know around me that are kind of not into this stuff like we are, and like neither of them have any interest in watching TV shows for movies. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just busy work.
And that's not a thing that we've talked about enough with this, Austin. Some people are movie people and some people are TV people.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, they're two different things, and
some people are of course both, but we've been trying to blur the line so hard with streaming services for
Yeah, we've kind of
the
forgotten.
serialized. I'm sorry, what?
We've kind of forgotten what TV is at this point.
Yeah, but people that don't love TV have not forgotten what TV is, and they go, "Well, I don't want to watch an 8-hour movie."
Yeah, no, exactly.
I want to be able to sit down and see a thing and then get up and go do something else. And if it's, yes, one story over, several episodes, and I can't binge it in 1 or 2 sittings, maybe I don't care enough to bother with it. I know lots of people like that.
No, absolutely. And I mean, with me and TV in general, because I've talked a lot about how I prefer episodic, but like even with the good stuff, like obviously I really like Daredevil, and I like the first season of Jessica Jones. I could not tell you a single thing that happens that is like just an episode from either of those shows, with the exception of Daredevil season 2, because it gets a little bit more arcy.
Yeah.
Like season 1 of Daredevil's great. I can't have like a breakdown for you of like, well, this is that episode, this is that episode. Like it's all just a 13-hour blur, which doesn't make me want to rewatch it. Like I think I've rewatched Daredevil season 1 and Jessica Jones season 1 like once each. Like, and that's it for any of those.
Yeah, I've gone back to the first season of Daredevil more than that, but not by a ton.
It's more of a commitment. I don't know. I prefer TV shows where I can just slap on an episode and enjoy it.
And of course, not everybody's that way. And the binging thing got super popular. You know, I just had this thought, and then I'll get back to super chats. Thanks, guys.
Well, that's like another thing that we can talk about. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, okay. Put a pin in that. Keep that in the back of your mind, because I just had a thought I'd never had before, which means it could come out and sound really stupid. But okay. I'm thinking out loud when I say this. If you're Marvel, maybe it's not the smartest thing to, and of course they're going back on this now, and they're not going to make as much content at once. But the whole Marvel fatigue, forget superhero, the whole Marvel fatigue thing has a lot to do with oversaturation. So I mean, this is a big mistake they made, and I think a lot of people agree with me on this. So I think one of the problems is, maybe, if you're Marvel, does it make sense that you're going to oversaturate the market and put that much stuff out at once when one of your biggest demographics is kids that grew up with your material and watched it over and over again and had a lot of free time in their hands, and now they're adults and they don't have as much time anymore? How much sense does that make? Because the older you get, I was just thinking about, earlier when you said, when we were talking about like people that don't want that commitment. I used to be much more in for TV commitments, and now I'm a dad, and I've got, I've got this job, and I've got 5 kids, and like I'm older than the kids that grew up with the MCU, but like they're in college now. They're starting families. They don't like you're trying to get them to commit to 1,000,000 hours of stuff all at the same time. Like the time that you could have gotten away with that was like 6-7 years ago. Maybe. Am I onto something?
I mean, I was 10 when Iron Man came out, so yeah, I had more time back then.
Yeah. It's just people and like you've got more time now than you likely will in 10 years.
Yeah, like I watched all of Daredevil, the good one. I watched all of Iron Fist season 1 and Luke Cage season 2, and I hated both of them like the entire time watching them. I still watch them because I was like, it's Marvel. I made it 2 episodes into She-Hulk and Moon Knight and went, nope, I have better things to do with my time. I
got better things to do.
It. Yeah.
But how much of that is about time, and how much of it is, if enough of it isn't, I don't know, isn't resonating with you, it's just not worth knowing about all of it anymore.
Yeah. No, I think.
I mean, that's how I was with Arrowverse. I mean, I watched everything from that, even the stuff that I thought wasn't very good, because I wanted a sense of that whole universe until it jumped the shark far enough. I didn't care anymore.
Yeah, and you go like,
I never liked Legends.
I'm a comic book guy. I like comic book things. I'll support this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not very good, but like I'm gonna watch it anyways because it's this thing that I like.
I used to say, look how spoiled we are. You know, maybe I've got the superhero fatigue thing in that I don't feel that way anymore. You know what I mean? I don't care how spoiled we are. Like, look, we get like all these different adaptations finally of all this stuff because it's been going on a long time now, and enough of it isn't worth my time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we need to bring that quality back.
Super chat from Gotham Guy. Is that a name you recognize?
No.
Me neither.
But my memory is really bad, so.
Okay, well, first time super chatter, possibly, and a $10 super chat. I'm gonna say he gets the gong.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were gonna play whatever that song is.
I don't have it up now, so it's a multi-purpose gong.
That was the everyone sleeping gong ding.
Wake up! We're doing a show. I shouldn't do that. It's like 12:30 in the morning. Everybody's asleep in my house.
Yeah, all I can hear is crying now.
Wow. So when you get a first time super chatter, you play your children crying. It's pretty freaking weird there, Cab. Gotham Guy, $10 super chat. Even though Multiverse of Madness was mostly a continuation of the Wanda series instead of Doctor Strange, I still liked it because Wanda being the villain and evil reminds me of the House of M comic, and I appreciated that we did get to that House of M place also, but respectfully, I did not have that. And I've heard that as a big complaint with that movie, that it's just a continuation of that TV show that maybe I didn't care about. But like, I think you could have. It'd be weird to not set it up at all. But like, just looking at Wanda as the villain of that piece, like Doctor Strange still feels like the main character and stuff. Like it.
Yeah, she's the villain. Yeah,
I don't know. Like
she's one of the better Marvel villains, I think.
And some of it was just that it blindsided me. I was afraid that we'd never get there with her because I thought the end of that show was a misstep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's almost like that show missteps, and then the movie goes, "No, this is where it should have ended." Okay, here you go. So that was good.
We have.
Oh yeah, that was my pin. I'll take my pin out.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's not.
I hope it's not a grenade.
Oh, it is. Get ready to explode, sir, because I'm about to bring up Echo and the whole binge thing with that.
Oh yes, please do.
So they're dropping all of Echo at once, and I think we also just found out right after I sent you that, Cap, that like a month before that they're starting Loki, which is not a binge thing. It is going to be weekly like the rest of the shows. So that's not their new model, I don't think. So it seems like Echo, either they want to completely drop and go, here it is, okay, bye, we're moving away, or maybe because it's Daredevil-y, like I don't know, like maybe I could see Daredevil going either way. I could see them releasing it all at once because that's how that show was, or I could see them doing it weekly.
I have to be honest with you. I will be shocked if Daredevil releases that way. I could see it releasing it being 18 episodes or whatever. I could see it releasing a couple at a time, but
yeah,
it would be nuts to go back to essentially the old American TV model of a huge season and drop it all at the same time. And also, we know that show is supposed to be more episodic and have kind of some one and dones, right? I mean, I feel like they've talked about that.
I'm not sure, but that's what I want from it. That was the other thing I always said with the Netflix shows, was that they needed at least like episodes here and there to mix it up.
Maybe I'm taking my wishful thinking as news. I just don't remember, but that's been the assumption I've been operating under.
No, that's what I've been hoping for. I don't know, just have an episode where, I don't know, Gladiator robs a bank. I don't know. You can do it.
Stiltman,
yeah, there you go.
But yeah, Feige has been recently saying that he wants their shows to be more episodic, have more of a clear, divide between the TV format and the movie format. And he's been citing, TNG as an example, like, let's make stuff a little bit more like that. And that makes me wonder if they could have, because the Echo thing may not be any indicator whatsoever. It could, like you said, just be for that show. Like, we shouldn't have even made this. Let's just throw it out there. We'll see what the quality is of that. But it's possible that they put that out and then they decide, when we have what is essentially an 8-10 hour movie, we drop it all at once. And when it's episodic, we put them out week to week, which I think is actually a really smart model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that would be an
What If comes out week to week, but
I mean, it should just not come out at all. But if it wants to,
I agree. But maybe Marvel Zombies is more serialized, so they put that out all at once.
I don't want. Yeah, can't even speak. Yeah,
yeah, it's getting late. We're gonna need to wrap up here in a minute. I can feel us both kind of fading.
Well, it hit like a certain point.
I can feel it in the air tonight.
Okay, now I'm good.
Oh Lord.
Phil Collins is stupid. That happened.
There should be a gong in the air tonight.
That'd be awesome.
Senior Sticks, $2 super chat. Austin, you forgot the Valiant universe. Also,
yeah.
Spawn.
I
never forget about Spawn.
Think about Bloodshot and be like, no, it's Bloodshot. And I'd be like, am I like the last person that remembers this movie exists? Possibly. Yeah, and then there's Spawn. But that'll never actually come out. The Spawn movie is like Cygor. It's just constantly being threatened that it's coming, but it won't.
Yeah. Okay, we have just a ton of comments that we haven't had a chance to look at as we've been going along, and I think I'm going to scroll up and try to take a look at least a couple of them before we finish off here, because people have been trying to get our attention here and there the whole time, and we've just been having this conversation, and I don't know, sometimes I wonder if maybe we should be pre-recording these, because I don't want to completely ignore the audience, but we get in a groove, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Exactly. What's that song? Is something in the groove. Groove is in the heart. God, it is light.
I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to watch you just flounder, though. It really is.
Hey, I'm a better flounder than the new Little Mermaid. So.
PlushEDX says Moon Knight seems to be one of the more popular Phase 4 projects.
So I think it was
Is that right?
I think it was when it came out, but I've heard like a ton of like flipping on it, where people have turned on it in the last few months. That's been my experience.
I was just completely kind of nonplussed by it. Like, I didn't have much of an opinion one way or another.
Yeah, and I thought it was terrible. I made it 2 episodes in, and I was like, I can't do it. Sorry, I made it 1 episode in, and I was just like, nope. And then one day I think one of the movies came out. I think it was Thor 4. I was looking at my ranking of the MCU, and I was like, it feels so weird not having something on there. Like, I had that moment where I was like, I need to see everything. And I was like, I need to have it here. And then I watched another episode, and I was like, no, I'm not going back to this.
Well, I promise not to use this comment as an excuse to rant about this again, but I just want to, just as a side thing, I just want to say this real quick and move on. But to your point, Austin, I'm in a place now, because with MCU and lots of other things, I used to be kind of, all in 100%. I've got to look at everything. And at the point where I don't even have that with Star Trek, it's just hard to necessarily have that with anything if it's not like really engaging me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
John Ty, you see that? I was able to just make that comment and move on. John Ty, I think it's just companies resting on their laurels when either company is at their best. I agree with that. I think that, well, and he's talking probably more the comic side. I think he's referring to that point I made earlier when I said, like, it's always one is really good over the other one. Overall, I think he's probably got something there. Where
what did you say again?
It's when he said he thinks when one company is doing great and the other one is doing poorly, it's because that other company is just resting on their laurels now. It's it's like the company was doing great and they went, we don't have to try as hard.
Yeah, you get to a point of confidence where you go like, well, everything we're doing is perfect right now. We don't have to worry. And you should always have at least a little bit of worry.
It's an identity problem. It's seeing yourself as successful as opposed to seeing your work as being of a quality that is therefore successful, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the difference. You start,
Yeah.
and I think we all do this to some degree. It's very difficult not to. If you get, if people heap enough praise on you, you'll get to a point where even subconsciously you'll say, I am inherently great.
Yeah, and then...
No, you're not. It's the stuff you've been doing that's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, too, with Marvel, one of the biggest issues is that at this point they make movies on the Marvel method, and they need to stop that.
Carl Maxey, I don't believe in superhero fatigue. It's just YouTube videos talking about Easter eggs and plot holes.
What? I mean, that is a thing.
Yeah, are those two statements related?
Those are like two different channels. It's like Cinema Sins and Cinema Finds.
Yeah, does he mean that? I don't know. I was gonna say maybe it's something to do with the idea that the only people that are still really into the genre are the people that are like obsessive about Easter eggs and stuff. Mm-hmm. That becomes, not that that's true, but that kind of becomes the perception where it's like, well, we must have superhero fatigue because the only people that are talking about this now are like circling everything in their thumbnails. I don't know if that's what he's saying.
Which is like a picture of Kang and he's in a circle and it's like what you missed in Ant-Man Quantumania.
Kang, he's right there.
Kang, he's right. Like he was kind of like the villain.
Smarty Pants Tutoring, one thing I think is kind of frustrating is we're bringing these lesser-known heroes, which is cool, but we're playing it so safe with their narratives.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
That's one of my things with Moon Knight, is we didn't adapt Moon Knight. We went, hey, how do we make a show that everyone will watch? And I'm like, oh, that's lame.
You got to take the risk to make it for the people that it's for. And as I always say, just hope that it's good enough that you win people over as opposed to trying to cater to everybody's sensibilities in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's my biggest butchering of all of the MCU, which is my boy Man-Thing, where we just went, hey, make a cutesy character that everyone will love and want to buy plushies of, and have him go...
So, some of the things we think of now as the most accessible things were not seen that way when they were initially released, and things can retroactively but very quickly become accessible, if that makes any sense. Like Guardians didn't look like it was for everybody, and then it was, and just like Star Wars before it.
Yep. No, it was a guy made a movie that he was passionate about,
and it was infectious.
Mm-hmm.
And we need projects like that because that's how kids and even adults too gain new interest. Like, you don't have to already be obsessed with something to find a love for it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of that good stuff like Guardians and the Suicide Squad got me to read those comics and like made me a bigger fan of them because I liked the movies.
Yeah, and it's not like you didn't. With some of those things, you probably knew about them already, and they didn't maybe immediately appeal to you based on title or covers or premise or wherever it is. But then you see that thing. Like, that's one of the things that I love about superhero movies is it can, even if they're not perfectly off the page, very often the ones that I look back at most fondly, it's because they got me into a character. Because I also like to read comics. And I go, I very often will go into a superhero movie based on a character I don't know anything about and hope that it makes me a fan of them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Which I've had with the MCU. You know, I've had that with Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Guardians. You know, it's a really nice feeling when you get that. I haven't had that with any of the Phase 4, Phase 5 stuff, but actually that's not true. Moon Knight made me want to read Moon Knight because I was like,
what is this actually about?
What is this actually about?
Deanna vs. Ant-Man opened with over 100 million. It had bad legs.
That is correct. It opened with almost as much as Shazam 2 made in its entirety, because that made 133 million.
I'm really appreciating a lot of Smarty Pants Tutoring's comments. He says, I do wonder sometimes if people not in the know can tell the difference between Marvel and DC.
No, there's definitely
I know for sure that some of them can't.
Especially when they get older. My favorite, I think I've told you about this, Cap, was when I went to see Infinity War the one time. Or no, it was Endgame. And there's two grandparents and their grandchild in front of me. And they were like, okay, like let's have like a quick discussion during the pre-show about like what happened in the last movie, because it's been a while. And they're like, okay, who died again? Like, okay, like Spider-Man died. This person died. The Flash died. And the grandkid was like, the Flash didn't die. And the grandma was like, yes, he did. He had a stone in his head and they pulled it out and the Flash is dead, okay?
yeah, you told me about that.
There's absolutely people like that. And I remember with Infinity War, when you got the Captain Marvel thing at the end of that movie in the after credits scene, there were some girls in front of me that were like, oh, like, what is that? And I leaned forward and I said, it's Wonder Woman.
I'm just checking to see if there's anything else we really need to comment on here.
Yeah, definitely.
Plushy DX, people complain about how the MCU isn't adult enough. Well, I think that kind of speaks to what you were just talking about, where you have things that are ostensibly for all these different audiences, but when you get like an act in or a few episodes or like an episode in, you start to realize, oh, okay, like this looks maybe darker or more or unusual in some way, but like you're kind of just plugging in for the formula again, or you're playing safe and trying to make everybody happy.
Well, I've been complaining about the sterilization,
kind of wearing a mask, I guess,
of blockbusters for like 20 years at this point.
Yeah, you're not the only one, by the way. Like,
20 is an exaggeration, but like 15. And
have you even been alive 20 years?
Close, almost. But that was something that I liked with Doctor Strange, because we did a little bit more with that, and we have that like crazy, what's his face, the vocal guy. Oh my god, stupid Inhuman, Black Bolt, where his like head sinks in and explodes, and like that was really crazy. I couldn't believe they got away with that in PG-13. And then just like all of Guardians 3, and people immediately complained that it was like graphic and not for children. But I think that is part of that sterilization, is once we get things that are a little bit more adult, we immediately complain because everything else is too far the other way. There's a part Dan always makes fun of in Black Widow where somebody gets stabbed in the stomach and there's just no blood.
Yeah. Well, and then I can't help but sympathize with the producers and the filmmakers to at least some degree, where it's like, where do you find that balance where we'll continue to be, accepted as overall family entertainment, but we can still, like take risks and try things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, like, what reputation do you want to have?
Mm-hmm. No, and I mean, I grew up with stuff like Pirates of the Caribbean and Indiana Jones that was pushing that line. Like, I wish we did more of that. Like, I think you can do that and still be a family film. Back to the Future is like one of the greatest family films of all time, and there's like very like nearly a rape scene in that movie. Like, you can push things a little farther out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, just challenge people a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Plushy DX. Okay, I feel like I'm learning something here that I wasn't appreciating before, and this is probably true, and it kind of explains a thing to me if it is. He says people despise that. He's referring to when we were talking about Wanda as the villain in Doctor Strange 2. People see Wanda as being character assassinated. Okay, so tell me if I'm right about this, Austin.
Get an ASMR cap. Okay, here we go.
I think I figured something out here.
Yeah.
So It's that, and I don't mean to like disrespect anybody that feels this way, but is the problem that you and I are comic people and we kind of wanted to go that direction, and that people were kind of shocked by that because that's not what they were expecting, and they liked that character as a superhero? And does it turn out that people don't like that movie for the same reason that they didn't like Iron Man 3?
I mean, it's possible, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely quite a bit of that. I think that is the reason why people love, or maybe not the reason, but like part of the reason why people like Shang-Chi so much.
Is just...
It's like, who cares? Like, we don't have any association with those comics. Like, oh, the Mandarin has like magic rings, so therefore it's closer to the comics because I know that the Mandarin has magic rings, and like that's all.
So
that
it's this.
matters.
I know I keep using this word, but so it's this perception of, so like people that. I'm hesitating because I'm going to sound really prudish when I say this, but people that don't read a lot of comics or don't know a lot about comics that still think that being close to source material is important. Going, based on what I think I know about this thing, you got close to the source material, so this is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of that. I mean, I went with a friend to see Shang-Chi, and when we walked out, he was like, "Oh man, wasn't it cool to finally see like a good Mandarin?" And I was just looked at him and I went, "You've never read an Iron Man comic in your life. Don't hit me with that." Because I will curb stomp you.
Robert Wild, $2 super chat. I got a fever and my prescription is more gong. I'm setting a precedent here.
Fever, and the only prescription is more gong. I feel like that was not my best walking, but whatever.
I am trying to get to the bottom of this chat here.
You like the MCU going through the bottom of the barrel to find characters.
Well,
Echo? Okay.
Austin, do you have any final thoughts on this? We should probably wrap things up here.
No, I feel like we covered a ton of bases.
We did. We were very thorough.
Yeah, I feel like we hit at least 3 like baseball, so there we go.
Did we get home?
Yes.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad to know that.
Mm.
I was there. I didn't notice.
Unlike Quantum Leap, we made the leap home. We made it.
Let me kind of restate one of my theses from earlier real quick and just say that I don't think the overall genre is dead because every superhero movie doesn't make $1 billion. And I also think that the genre having to take a step back and not dominating could be a really good thing for it creatively, because as much as I love superhero movies and I've kind of, made a career out of talking about them, I never needed them to be 75% of the box office take, and I think it's been really detrimental to movies at large that that's happened. I mean, I'm the first person to admit that. I understand people that don't just have superhero fatigue but never liked the superhero movie thing because of what it's done to the business in general and other kinds of movies they like. People who go, I can't see a lot of action movies that don't just feel like superhero movies, or people that say, what happened to, big screen like romance films and stuff like that. I can't disagree with that. Mm-hmm. Like, if your feelings are hurt by that, you're completely vindicated in my book. So, like, I love seeing, the heightened and often absurd characters and situations and stuff in comics attempted on the big screen. But I didn't need it to dominate. And I think that that's been really bad for the business and sometimes for superhero movies themselves. I think the best thing that can happen is this middle road where, they stick around, we're still making them. Get it sort of back to mid-2000s, but we figured out a lot of the problems with what we were doing back then. You know what I mean? Like I don't need 15 of these a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree. And I mean, superheroes not even My favorite film genre. Like it's more of like a geeky thing that I like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, like there's tons of stuff I like more than this outside of that. Um, absolutely, especially when it comes to film.
I don't think it's mine either, but I've been doing this for so long, it's hard to tell.
Well, for me,
I've
it's
invested
always
so
been,
much of my time and energy in it.
yeah. No, absolutely. Well, because for me, it's always been comics first. So then you have the superhero movie stuff, and then I really like that as a fan of comics, and I like to discuss it with people, especially. So like that's where it becomes fun for me. But like where like I have more fun discussing the Batman with you than I do being like, hey, let's talk about I don't know whatever horror movie that I like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just because we both have that same kind of source material stuff and like we can talk about how it relates to that and whatnot. You know, there's I don't know, geek out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's there's a community element to it, but that could be true of just anything with whoever your friends are.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. We appreciate you watching us, whether you were live or after the fact. We drew a pretty cool crowd for us at 12 and then 1 in the morning. So thanks for coming in for this. Austin and I are going to be back again tomorrow night after the Captain Logan show. So the Captain Logan show is 7 o'clock tomorrow night. I don't know what the lead-in topic is yet, but we'll talk about something interesting and hopefully. And feel free to bring topics and questions yourself, of course, and talk to you for a couple hours. DJ is not going to be able to make it, so Jason's going to mod that show. So he and I will be there together. And then at around 10 o'clock, Austin and I finally, third time's the charm, are going to do the Suicide Squad. I guess I should say it this way: the Suicide Squad commentary for the Superhero Rewind commentary project. Austin is going to come on board and be my sidekick for that show now. 2.5 hours is a really long time to talk by yourself about anything. And it'll be nice to have somebody to bounce things off of. So thanks a lot for doing that, Austin. And it'll be fun to start with that one because I know that's a movie you like a lot.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of caps saying, "Look at this interesting idea," and I'm gonna go, "King Shark funny."
Yes, Austin, that is your hand. Very good. We'll see you again real soon. And I was Captain Logan. This was Austin the Day Ghost.
Bye, everybody. Have
Bye,
a good
everybody.
night.